Hello again, I am Blunty. That's WildHearts. Well, more accurately, that is WildHearts side by side with WildHeartsS. And they are slightly different games. Like, functionally, they're slightly different. We're not quite sure how different they are yet. There's not a lot of detail about that, about what has changed between the original failed version of the game that originally launched on the PlayStation 5, the Xbox Series X and S, and PC back in early 2023, with this new revived version that is headed to the Nintendo Switch 2 in a few weeks. We only really know of one significant change already, the fact that multiplayer has risen up to 4 players per hunt rather than the 3-player cap the original had. So now on that factor it matches its inspiration, Monster Hunter. Always did consider it a weird choice to make, 3 players in the original. But based solely on the demo that is currently out for Switch 2, combat feels basically identical. But at this point we are just waiting and seeing if they've tweaked some of the more subtle mechanics or progression and whatnot. What we can do, though, out of pure novelty and curiosity, if not particularly useful in any practical sense, is take a look at what graphical changes have been made to squeeze this game, which barely ran properly on PlayStation 5, Series X, and even PC. Don't even get us all started on what the Series S version looked like back in the day. Oh, it was bad. We can have a look at PlayStation 5 and Xbox compared to the Switch 2's sometimes surprisingly powerful but comparatively humble hardware. Again, I am very, very aware that this isn't actually useful in any practical sense, so rethink leaving some pissy comment about that, I know. So when you do leave a comment, and I do hope you do, please just, leave something more interesting instead, a little more insightful, thoughtful perhaps. Because yeah, obviously, basically no one will be choosing between these versions of the games. The original version of the game is functionally dead, and has been for years. The reasons behind which we spoke about in more detail in yesterday's video, where I focused solely on the performance, the frame rates and presentation of the Switch 2 version. But yeah, a quick glance at Steam charts, the game is dead. Super dead. I mean, this game can be soloed, but it is a lot more fun when you engage in the multiplayer. And there's certain big fights, like just a couple of them, that are, while not impossible to do solo, aren't nearly as fun to do solo. They feel designed for team-ups, or at least to strongly encourage multiplayer team-ups. So when the OG game's player base withered and died, it left the game notably less playable in my mind. So the question of, should I get this on PC or PlayStation 5 or get the new Switch 2 version, isn't really a useful question to be asking. That question might have been more interesting if the developers had engaged a little cross-platform multiplayer, but that is not happening on the Switch 2 version, and likely will never happen, because the original version of the game was published by EA, this version is published by Koei Tecmo themselves, and there might be some issues there about how multiplayer servers and stuff were run. I don't know whether EA handled the original ones or not. It's probably complicated and annoying, but don't expect it to happen is what I'm saying. So the Switch 2 version is the only practical choice if you want to enjoy this game at its fullest and most complete. But yeah, I still find it interesting to see what has happened to this game visually to make it run, as we discovered in yesterday's video, surprisingly smoothly at above 40 FPS at basically all times, especially considering the original version of the game instantly locked down a reputation for being an absolute pig to run on even beefy PC hardware, and there were many issues on the console versions. On that note though, I'm showing exclusively performance mode stuff from both the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox versions here. They did also have a resolution mode that pulled the game down to a locked VSync 30 FPS for the sake of turning some graphics stuff up a notch or two and running at a high resolution, obviously. Though the Xbox version could barely even keep that 30 FPS mode stable. But considering the Switch 2 version, or at least the demo we actually have available right now, doesn't have any ultimate graphics modes, there is no resolution mode in this version. It only runs with an unlocked frame rate, so it makes the most sense to compare it to the performance mode of the other consoles, where it shares the same unlocked frame rate. In the case of the PlayStation 5 and Xbox, it was targeting 60 FPS at 1080p. It should also be noted it would often drop to the high 40s under larger stresses. So, a reasonably fair comparison in that sense, I think. I'm not going to do any pixel counting on the Switch 2 version, certainly not on the demo, but I think we can all tell it is not native 1080p, and doesn't look like DLSS is being used for the upscaling to me either. It seems like there's some sort of in-house solution for that. I haven't done a lot of squinting at it, but it's missing some of the telltale signs of DLSS. But you know what? I'm going to leave the big dork breakdown of that side of things to the blokes at Digital Foundry or something. I personally don't sweat those details too much, usually. I care a lot more about how a game feels to actually play. And again, as we spoke about in yesterday's video, it does feel pretty damn good on Switch 2. Surprisingly so. I'll leave any chat about personal preferences, about what the graphical settings do to this game's rather attractive art style to you folks, but personally, just briefly, outside of the texture resolutions and dithering and whatnot, which are obviously lesser on the Switch 2, I think I like the Switch 2 version's presentation a little more, just generally, at a glance, than the overly hazy PlayStation 5 version, or the slightly too dry and over-sharpened Xbox version. The Switch 2 has some haze, without going overboard with it, I feel, and I think it's a nice balance on that side of things. It might be a little too contrasty, perhaps, but you could probably negate that by deliberately washing it out a bit using an incorrect, too high setting on the brightness setting, which is the only user-accessible graphic option we even have. Anyway, hopefully you found this interesting. I'm Blunty, thank you to the patrons, I'll catch you next time.
Let it weave this seed into your soul. Let the spirits in the karakuri join your own. Let them drive you to hunt. For that is your destiny.